Welcome to the Week in Mobile, episode number 8, recorded Sunday, March 13th, 2011. Is that a bubble bursting? In this episode, Apple steals South by Southwest, and $42 million makes me one angry bird. All this and more coming up now on the Week in Mobile. Welcome to the Week in Mobile, episode number 8. 8. Not a habit yet, but 2 months we've been doing this, guys, and we have not educated a soul yet, which is the greatest part of all of this. My name is Rob Woodbridge. I'm your co-host from Untether.tv and RobWoodbridge.com. I can never leave that out. And joining us today is the consummate mobile panel. We've got Anthony Rizk, who is the co-founder and CEO of Zebu Mobile and also the author of Beginning BlackBerry Development, which he does have another copy of it floating around. Somebody go and buy that one from him. Anthony, thank you for coming. Week 8, thanks for coming back again and again and again. And of course we've got the incomparable Jeff Bacon, the suave hog himself, the director of all things mobile for BitHeads, which is a great little company that's growing like stink. Bacon, thank you so much. Kind of a disappointing week in mobile, really. Not a lot of big news when it came to software. But we wanted to lead in with a story that as we were just talking about, there is really no way to lead into this. And it's not a joyous story. Our hearts and minds are going out to the people who are suffering in Japan as a result of the earthquake and tsunami. But what it did do was bring to light, again, a natural disaster does this, but brings to light the impact that mobile is having on the way that we are now communicating and disseminating and producing news and information. So it's been pretty amazing to watch the amount of activity that's happened as a result of mobile. And, it takes somewhat of something like this for us to actually be able to see the impact of, a natural disaster to show us how this is a new mechanism of communication. I didn't find out about this on the news, the standard news. I found out about it on my iPad through Flipboard. And then I watched a Twitter stream through my iPhone about what was going on. And I think a lot of people found out about this way, away from traditional news. What was your experience with this, guys?
Well, it was, definitely the same thing. I mean, it's kind of, when you said you found out about it, through mobile first, I'm thinking back to like a year ago in Ottawa, and it's not obviously the same kind of thing at all. We had like a tiny earthquake of like a magnitude, I don't know, 2 or something.
Yeah.
But the first thing I did, and I'm just trying, this is the closest parallel I have to, an actual natural disaster that's ever happened in my life, is this tiny little shaking of it. But the first thing I did was go to Twitter, because I'm like, well, what's the first thing that's going to be updated in that event, to see if there was really an earthquake or it was just like a little rumble, like a big truck that went by my house. So you go to Twitter, and instantly, there's already like a couple dozen people, and this is just a tiny earthquake in Ottawa, already a couple dozen people commenting on the earthquake in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And so in Japan, I can only imagine that, something that magnitude, that a huge number of people, and this is, a year later, in a nation that's more mobile savvy, people that use their phones more still, I think, than any other nation in the world, that the amount of traffic this must have generated right away, on stuff like Twitter and on SMS and everything, would have been incredible.
Well, yeah, they're talking about 1,200 tweets a minute in the first hour after the earthquake. So that's a pretty incredible amount of activity, and that's not including all of the citizen journalism that happened as a result. The mobile phones being used as cameras and capturing some. I mean, they documented it pretty much from start to finish. There weren't big crews walking around with cameras. It was the average person with a cell phone or a small portable camera that were taking these videos and broadcasting. And then this is what the major channels like the BBC and CNN are broadcasting, which is this crappy video, but still, you got it documented from every angle.
Yeah.
For me, it was actually Facebook, where in both of those cases, the other one, the Japanese one, and the one in New Zealand also that happened a month ago or so, where I found it a bit at first, because I don't pay as much real-time attention to Twitter because there's just so much information on there, but on the Facebook side, it's where people I know are posting stuff, and it seems much more relevant for me. And when people on Facebook, post that stuff pretty quickly, they get it up there. They're like, "Hey, did you hear about this?" I'm much more interested in taking a look at it, and you find people who have personal connections that right into the danger zone of where everything are happening. Versus sometimes on Twitter, you have such a wide cloud of people. I find on Facebook, when someone posts something, they often have a personal connection in, and you can feel a lot more connected to what's going on in those areas by paying attention to the social networks. And I think one of the things I've found that's most interesting about the major disaster scenarios we've had over the last little while in terms of keeping up with them is that not just the initial burst of information, but the continuous stream of information that comes out. It's basically regular updates that are done by people who are there, as you said, Rob, not major camera crews going in. And the capitalist side of me could say that that's good for news organizations as well, that they don't have to send reporters and cameramen into those disaster zones on a go stand on the edge of the hurricane and hold on to the pole while you're trying to get blown away and get the camera shot, because you have people there that are taking those photos and providing that commentary. And I think for most people that's provided a much more human feel to the information flow coming into those areas by having real people with their own mobile devices, their own Twitter accounts, their own Facebook accounts, posting information in first person, not having some English or American reporter over there telling you what's going on and looking like they could be standing in the middle of a hurricane. You're like, why would you go there and do that?
Well, all is not like that. There was one American that was killed that was swept away because he was trying to get the perfect shot. I think he was trying to document what was going on. So you're still not impervious. You cannot hide behind a cell phone and expect not to be heard. But what it really does, we've seen this over the last 60 days with all of what was going on in Libya, and Egypt, that this is now becoming a very powerful social tool for connecting the world with real-time activity, and it's something that can't be stopped. And you're right. I mean, it's almost visceral. You're feeling it as people are feeling it, and that's what you've seen is the purest form of communication in real time, except for picking up the phone and calling somebody. So I think that this is something that from a personal standpoint, my mother lived in Pakistan, in Islamabad during a coup in the late 90s, and the only way that I needed to feel reassured that everything was okay was that if I could see her logged on at Skype or ICQ at that time, I think it was, so if I could, when she logged on there, I knew every day that everything was fine. And you go from that kind of 10 years ago to the fact that people are now communicating with loved ones and finding out real time what's going on in those countries, from them in real time. It's a pretty incredibly powerful mechanism. So again, not such a great thing unfolding in Japan, but certainly the impact that mobile is having is being felt, and this is on the good side, not the greedy side, is what I would say.
Oh, absolutely. It's all the services stepped up in such a big way. They have throughout everything, through the Arab revolutions, and through this, and Google, on their homepage posting information.
Yeah.
Facebook and Twitter, and they're able to disseminate stuff in a way that the governments just can't. But
the governments can turn it off.
Well, so this is it. I thought of it interesting. What's going to be interesting? So you think about something like, and there was talk about this. So in Libya that they eventually turned off the internet, and Egypt the same thing. But what happens when you get to totally mobile devices and they're running on some kind of mesh network, right?
Yeah.
Sort of a peer-to-peer network, and then stuff just bleeds in over the edges, and you can't turn that off, right? So it was really social networking that was, I think, the big story, obviously in the revolutions in the Mideast, and I think in Japan too. Not necessarily mobile, but mobility. When you get devices that are capable of communicating, peer-to-peer, relaying information, I think that could be really interesting. That's something that you can't turn off. You got to just wait for the batteries to run out and hope no one has got a power generator to recharge their devices.
Well,
that'll be interesting.
I've always said that we're not in any other business other than the electricity business, the electricity consumption business, because if you really want to paralyze something, turn that off, and with no electricity you can't do much. But speaking of I'm going to shift gears away from this and into a topic that I think that we're going to get a little bit lively, which is speaking of electricity. $42 million into Rovio for Angry Birds. Like, you know, all that's doing is making my blood boil. What we're doing here is what they're doing by accepting that, and I would, and everybody in their right mind should. But, you know, we're sitting here, everybody's debating whether or not we're in a bubble or not, and a dumb game company gets $42 million. I was saying that you could connect every single third world nation in fiber optics for $42 million. But no, give it to the goddamn pigs killing chickens. Come on! I you know...
Chickens killing the pigs?
Well, whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, I play it, my kids play it. Well, I find this unfathomable that there's any conceivable reason why they think that $42 million is a good idea, you know, Series A funding for a brand like Angry Birds. And I know you guys are completely on the opposite, or maybe not on the opposite side, but $42 million can do a lot. And extend the Angry Birds brand into television shows is not something that I think is worth that kind of money. Begin.
Well, I'll let Bacon turn to this one first here.
Well, I mean, we were talking, you know, just before we started about this a bit, and I also think, you know, $42 million on the surface sounds kind of ridiculous for basically investing in a brand, in one brand, basically Angry Birds. That's what they're investing in, really, and saying, you know, we think that brand is worth 42 million times whatever the percentage they got out of it. I don't know if they got 5% or 10% or 50% of Rovio for $42 million.
Still doesn't matter. It's a lot.
It is a lot, but I mean, if you look at it, I compare this, and I know you guys may disagree with this assessment, but I look at this investment at Rovio equivalent to investments that are made in Facebook and Twitter that are giving those companies valuations that are, you know, far outside the realm of possibility. And I equate it like this because basically what is happening is the valuations of companies on the edge of technology, on the bleeding edge, the technology of brand, of something new, are getting overvalued. It's the same thing that happened in the late 90s before the internet bubble burst, which was people put money, ridiculous amounts of money, into ridiculous companies because they didn't want to miss out. They were trying to get in on the bleeding edge of something new with a bunch of money, hoping it was going to really pay off.
This is not a platform.
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you're investing in. What's important is what you're trying to invest in is something that's going to explode, and something that's going to explode in value. So if Rovio gets 42 million, what if the next company gets 50 million? The next company gets 60 million. The people who are investing in Rovio are saying now, what if I don't get in there now? What if somebody else gets it first at 40 million, and then I have to put $50 million in? Now I'm already lost 20%. So it's not really, it's an investment in the brand, and it's a ridiculous amount of money, but you have to look at it from the investor standpoint of they're trying to get in early before a whole bunch of other people get in with even more ridiculous valuations for companies and get their money in first.
Well, you're talking investor psychology. You're totally right. I mean, you're totally right that's what's, you know, that's what drives the valuations. I don't agree it's the same thing as, so something like Facebook or Twitter, it's not the same kind of investment. I mean, those are more, I think that there is more apparent value in them, but this is more, it has potentially a lot of value in sort of like a traditional media. You know, what do you value a brand at? Like look at you know, an extreme case like Harry Potter, right? So the brand Harry Potter is worth probably like $25 billion, something like that, or probably more. I mean, that's probably how much money they've made off of it. It's actually probably worth a lot more than that. And I'm not saying that, you know, Angry Birds is the next Harry Potter. You're not going to see Angry Birds in the Sorcerer's Stone or whatever, but they could, you know, there's a lot they can do. They've sold 2 million units of plush toys already. Yeah. Like 2 million, you know, plushies and all kinds of, you'd see Angry Birds toy, you know, play sets, like plastic things where the birds launch and they go, woo, stuff like kids like it. There's a lot they could do. I mean, you know, and $42 million, I mean, hire an A-list celebrity like to
play them in the movie
or something to play the lead in the Angry Birds movie.
Exactly.
That's a really good analogy, Anthony, in terms of looking at Angry Birds now and look at Harry Potter when the first book came out or the first movie.
Yep.
Would you have put $250 million into Harry Potter when the first one came out? You kind of look at that and go, well, they've had one movie success. Is it worth $250 million or $500 million? We'd be raising our eyebrows at that. But now we're like, hell, if I could go back in time and put that much money in, absolutely I'd put that much money in.
And
so the
and
people
I think
in Angry Birds are in the same context. Like putting $42 million in now, because if I don't, and 2 years from now, they blow up like Harry Potter blew up, I'm going to be kicking myself for not doing that.
Well, that's it, and you could look at it like, this is like the TV shows in the '80s, right? That we all grew up with, like He-Man and the Master of the Universe and GI Joe and stuff like that. The kids nowadays are playing video games, and this is a really cartoony, really kid-friendly video game. It's got all kinds of characters that you could see. You could see this building into something, right? You could see all kinds of stupid stuff, like TV Saturday morning cartoon shows that we think are the dumbest thing in the world, but then kids look back on 20 years later with nostalgia. The Angry Birds breakfast cereal, the Angry Birds bed sheets, the Angry Birds, I don't know, underoos. But it could explode. Like this is brand. There's value in this brand. They've created something and they're pushing it. They're being really smart. They've created these characters. They're pushing it as far as they can, and they're going to see what they can do. Create little personalities for all the birds. They're starting to do that. But
so you see what that is right there? You see this little spot right here?
Yeah.
It's called a corner. Angry Birds is a corner case.
It is.
Angry Birds is a once in a lifetime. These guys are never going to do this again. Rovio will never have a product that is as successful as Angry Birds. Right. But throwing $42 million into it is not going to make it more successful. Like if you think about, maybe if you think that the next round is going to be an up round, there's a psychology of investing here. But it's not the same as it was during the bubble days. Everybody was trying to build a platform back then, and you're right. Pets.com wasn't so great, but all of that technology that we built, that they put all this money into, the best of it, 10 years later, has come to fruition. Right? The best of that technology that billions of dollars was invested into, like Silicon Valley put $38 billion into .com startups. Even in Ottawa, we put $1 billion into this. But the infrastructure that was built, the business models that actually survived, like Amazon, are now starting to come to fruition 10 years later. Angry Birds is not one of those. Angry Birds is a brand. It is not a business.
But what about look at Mickey Mouse?
Oh, don't compare it to Mickey Mouse, man.
Why not?
Because do you really think that in 60 years our kids are going to be looking at Angry Birds?
Did you think in the 50s, 60 years later, we were still going to be looking at Mickey Mouse and saying it has value as a brand?
I think so, because they had like Disney World. So are they going to have Angry Birds World?
Mickey Mouse was the first thing Walt Disney did, right?
Absolutely.
And he built an empire starting with that and then came up with new characters and things after that. So why can't Angry Birds, why can't Rovio do the same thing? I mean, I'm not saying they will, because their odds are like 1,000,000 to 1. But, if their odds are 1,000,000 to 1 and someone puts $42 million in, I mean, those are pretty good odds, right? I mean, come on. The payoff's pretty good. But.
Well, yeah, I would take that $42 million and go and find 42 other companies and put $1 million into each one of those. Because then you have a likelihood of actually hitting on something.
But you already said, right, Angry Birds is already a corner case. It's already the top-selling game on iPhone, on iPad,
Anthony,
on
where
Android.
can it go from here?
But this is the thing. If you're going to place a bet, bet on, like, this guy. This horse is way ahead of everybody else.
I know, but it's like you have a harder challenge when you're already number one in every category to build out $42 million. Like you can't think that is good money.
But Angry Birds is not going to be number one on the iTunes charts forever. Already, Tiny Wings has kicked it off in some markets, right? It's got some momentum going on. It's behind it. Cut the Rope came pretty close to
invest in Tiny Wings.
Yeah, well, not $42 million, but
no.
If you look at, if you had to pick something to do that you said, okay, I could use anything in the world. I could pick any name, any brand, any company, whatever. But you have to hit number one on the app charts.
Yep.
What would you pick? Right now, Angry Birds 2. Like, I don't care what you do. If you call it Angry Birds 2, if they put Angry Birds 2 out, I guarantee you 100% it goes to number one.
Yeah.
So that's a guaranteed sequel. At least have a second success and then build from that. But
Bacon, how much does it cost to build it?
Doesn't matter.
$42 million bucks. So, you know what? I think that if it's not my money. But what I would have done, I mean, taking investment is especially this amount of money is massive dilution. It's it's an injection of capital, obviously, for other things. Like they're going to make the plush, they're going to make everything that you can possibly do with Angry Birds. And in a year from now, we'll be like, Angry what? And we'll realize a year from now that, oh, you know what? The start of the meltdown, the mobile meltdown, the bubble bursting in mobile was that stupid investment. Or if Angry Birds or Rovio goes public, trust me, run if Rovio goes public.
Oh.
But I think what's going to happen here is that we're going to forget about Angry Birds. This $42 million is going to go away. The what I would have done if I would have sold for $42 million and put that money in my pocket instead of accepting somebody and dilution for what? What's their exit? I don't get it.
I gotta believe they have. See, this is the same thing. This is like 4 years ago. Whoever it was, I don't know if it was Information Week, but whoever declared Mark Zuckerberg as one of the guys in tech who didn't matter because he was an idiot because he turned down $1 billion offer from Yahoo to buy Facebook, and he could have pocketed that money, $1 billion. What kind of idiot turns down $1 billion, right? He had a vision. I mean, I still think Facebook is undervalued but that's a different topic.
$77 billion.
I think it's worth more than Google, Facebook. But I think that, but that's a whole. This is not that show.
So,
but I think that $42 million is not bad at all for Rovio. I think it's a good investment. It's a good call.
All right. Well, we got to get off this topic because I think we could just talk about it all day. If you have a comment about it, who are listening to this, let us know, man. Like, am I out of touch with reality? $42 million is good, or is $1 million in 42 companies? I think if you put $1 million into any goddamn game that's out there right now, you could drive it to number one. I swear to God, you could do that, right? You could, and you have much more to gain if you're the 1,000th game and you put $1 million into that to drive it to number one than you do it maintaining number one with a company like Rovio.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but
all right.
You can take a game to number one, but can you keep it there? Taking it to number one for a week is worthless. I mean, you make some money off of it, but long term, it's worthless. Putting it to number one for 6 months, that's worth a lot of money.
It is, and across multiple platforms,
game, guaranteed hit.
I agree. Yeah. Look, you know what? All I say is that replicate that. Do it again, because we know that it's the most impossible thing to do in this ecosystem with 300,000 apps, or 600,000 across platforms. So Rovio raises $42 million. Jury's out. We're going to see how this lands. I don't even know where to begin with that. So let's bring it on. I mean, let's talk a little bit more about the gaming space. I don't know if this is a big story or not, but Android, there was a Pocket Legends developer. There was a story that came out that said that basically Android brought home much more money than iOS for Pocket Legends. Did you guys, we talked about this last week when we talked about the impact, or 2 weeks ago, where BlackBerry OS was the appropriate place to be if you wanted to make a lot of money. But for Pocket Legends, they said that they had many more downloads and generated much more revenue from Android than they did iOS. Does this surprise you guys? It's a one-off, right? This is a corner case again.
I think any app is going to have some platform that it does best on. I think we see the numbers, like the averages, the high and low and the median and all that kind of stuff, but it really depends. Like I just don't know enough about the market, like for whatever they're making for action-oriented RPGs. Like maybe they've got great competition on iOS and crappy competition on Android. I just don't know enough. Like they could be the only game in town on Android. Or people who are half decent.
Is it tailored right for what they've classified as the geek that carries the Android? So a massive multiplayer online role-playing game is not for the average lighthearted 18-year-old girl, I guess, is or me who carries an iPhone.
Or and I don't play these games, so I don't know, but there could be, there's like 2,000 of them on iPhone and there's like 5 on Android, and
yeah,
well, you're going to make more money on Android.
Yeah,
it's interesting that the market's. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's what it does show is that you can make money on any platform. You can make your most money on iPhone. You can make your most money on BlackBerry. You can make your most money on Android. Yep. It's not about necessarily the platform that you're on. It's about building an application or a game or some tool or piece of software that appeals to that demographic that uses that platform the best. The same app is not necessarily going to be number one on every platform. Angry Birds may be the exception. But for the most part, you're not going to have the same app number one. You're going to have an app that appeals to the iPhone demographics number one there, the BlackBerry demographics number one there, the Android demographics number one there. So, when we talked before about what the average revenue per app was in different stores, it doesn't mean that the same application will generate those exact averages on each store. each application has to be looked at to decide which platform works best on. And I think this is showing that for them, this game, it appeals most to the Android demographic of users. I'm saying that without doing analysis of where was it positioned, how long was it positioned for, where was it marketed, how was it cross-marketed to, but just in the general sense, it does show that you don't have to be on an iPhone to make the most money on a particular platform.
Absolutely true. Go where your customer base is, and right now, I keep saying this, is that start building for Android tablets, because I think they're up to 18 apps now. It's the app count on the Android tablet.
It's true. It could be huge.
So I think Pocket Legends should get onto the Android tablet, and I think that they'll accelerate their growth. Think about it. Like, I mean, if you sell one app, you're selling one out of every 18 or 20 apps. So not a big deal. I think the lesson there, obviously, is that it's no Rovio, no Angry Birds. So who cares?
Right? Well, I think Jeff was right on the money with this one.
Yeah.
You can make money anywhere, and
And that's
they're not going to be securing $42 million in financing. So.
You don't need to do that to make a couple of $100 on the Android marketplace.
But would you invest $1 million in these guys? And
sure.
41 other guys like them.
Well, yeah. I mean, spread the wealth.
Yeah.
How about $1 million into the week in mobile? I think we could do some pretty cool stuff.
What could we do with $42 million? Come on now.
I don't even know.
That's a sound investment decision.
With $42, we could take this thing for a long ride here.
We could push this out. Plush dolls of the three of us.
Plush dolls. Okay.
Saturday morning cartoon.
Saturday morning cartoon. Well, all right. So let's talk about something a little bit more newsworthy. Apple stealing everybody's thunder at South by Southwest. What an interesting story this was. Hey? Like, you heard this, that they basically set up a pop-up store, what they call an inflatable store, which is not really inflatable. I was expecting the bubble rooms, but the inflatable store in Austin for South by Southwest, and with the only intent to sell iPad 2, because they were being launched on the same day. This can't be a coincidence, can it? Like, Apple doesn't do anything like they set up a pop-up store in Austin. The report that I read was that there were two stores in all of North America. The two stores in all of North America that had the most inventory was obviously their penultimate store in New York on Fifth Avenue, which is a great store, and the one in Austin. Right? So that's where all the inventory was, and it just so happens that every technologist or media-savvy person or anybody who might be interested in iPad was congregating or converging in Austin for South by Southwest. So there were lineups, for 12 or 14 hours. When they were supposed to be at the conference, they were sitting in line waiting for their iPads. And that's been by far the biggest story, I would say, to date. Do you think this is a coincidence?
No, it's not a coincidence, but what it is a good example of how even large companies can use small company tactics for marketing and promotion and getting news. Like they got a bunch of press and news and stuff like that. Not that Apple needs a lot of press and news, but every company can use it. So they got, just by shipping a whole bunch more down there and putting a store in place, for what that cost them, the amount of press and marketing and tech people that got their hands on an iPad 2 because they were there rather than away at a conference instead, like, that's pretty valuable for them. And it really shows that if you're creative in your marketing, your advertising, and the way you sell your products, you can get a lot of extra bang for your buck rather than just shipping it out to your regular stores and saying, everybody come get it.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
It's interesting. It's kind of guerrilla marketing with a big company budget, right?
Yeah.
So you spend like whatever Apple did, probably like $30-40 million on a little guerrilla marketing stunt, and you get a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I hadn't thought of that. You're right, because Apple doesn't need the press, because Steve Jobs like sneezes and top news,
Well,
item number 1. Is Steve Jobs okay? Item number 2,
that
magnitude 9 Earth by Kids Japan, but yeah, like, you're right. Like, all the press, all the tech bloggers, and all the press would get their hands on an iPad. That's interesting.
Well, they did, and by they sold out, obviously. Now there's a 4-week wait for the iPad 2, and the numbers they're talking about are between 600 and 700,000 iPads being sold in the first 24 hours, and at the average price of about $599, we're talking about $450 to $500 million. Boom, like that. Like, that's incredible.
amazing, isn't it? It's well, how much did Apple make on the original iPad? Like, it's insane.
Billions.
This is why everyone else wants to be in the tablet market.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I think it was a lot of stuff that Jeff said over the last couple of podcasts about, iPad's going to be dominant for a long time, but the market's big enough that there's room for the credible second alternative. That someone's just, there's going to be people out there. We might know one or two of them that won't buy an iPad but want a tablet, and this is a credible alternative. Whether or not it's as good as the iPad, it doesn't really matter. But it's the fact that 15, 16 million, probably 3 times that many at the end of the year iPads means that there's a secondary market of at least 20% of that, which is huge.
Which is big,
right?
yeah. Well,
sell a couple million tablets, and you're doing pretty good.
2 million, I think 1 million tablets, what BlackBerry was talking about with their Playbook, 1 million tablets is $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's adding $1 billion to your bottom line. Not so bad.
No, you can justify, I mean, God, I hope it didn't take them $1 billion of R&D to develop their tablet.
It probably took them less than $42 million, if you ask me. So all I'm saying is, right, there's a perfect example. Put $42 million into a tablet maker, and we'll see what comes up with that. I bet you it'll be more than Angry Birds. I'm not going to say any more about those guys. So, it was pretty amazing to watch. I've been watching a lot of the coverage from South by Southwest, and everybody walking around with their iPads, and not to mention that everybody bought a slick cover. That everybody's like, oh my God, look, the cover comes down and it's it turns it off, and everybody has to remind that as Leo Laporte said today that BlackBerry I think did that 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we also saw there's a great video that's floating around. I think his name is Jeff, of all the things. Jeff from RIM, walking around the streets of Austin with a Playbook. And so RIM is really pushing hard down there. And, I like what they're doing. And I think that they got to be close to releasing this product. They've got to be close. Because they're starting to sign deals. Who did they sign? It was Seventh
Digital.
Seventh Digital to provide music purchases on the Playbook, and so I think that this is close. I think that we're going to actually see this thing, within the 12 months that they said that it would, from time of launch or time of announcement to time of launch within 12 months, which is good, I suppose, as we're getting closer to that. But you've had a chance, Jeff, to see that video. You think it's ready?
Well, the one I played with at GDC last week or 2 weeks ago, at GDC, felt pretty good, and everything aside from the fact that they disabled anything that required internet access because they didn't have any internet access there. Nor did I. For some reason, the expo floor, the Wi-Fi didn't work on, but whatever. So it looked pretty good. There's aside from a couple of minor issues, and I think those were not fresh off the line playbooks that they had going there. And every time you see a video of someone using it, it looks good, and people are using it in real time. They're not showing like pre-rendered videos of it.
Nope.
Every time you see someone using it, they're holding it in their hands and they're doing stuff on it, and they're interacting with it, and they're not like just don't come any closer, stay 6 feet away, and I'll press the button, it'll do the little demo thing. No, they're using it in real time. So. This video shows it flipping from portrait to landscape, which we hadn't seen before, but we hadn't not seen it either. It's not like someone on the video went, oh, can you show me flipping it portrait to landscape? And the guy went, no, it's not working yet, or no, I won't show you. So I think one thing that RIM, they're doing is people are using these and they're showing off more and more features almost incidentally. Like they're showing the 7 Digital store, and incidentally they're showing it flips portrait to landscape. I don't think that's the best idea. I think they should be coming out with a little more fanfare, showing all the stuff it can do, and rather than just having these things slip in and out. But the fact that they aren't making a big deal about it also is kind of weirdly comforting in that, I think there's this quiet confidence out of RIM. Everybody I talk to at RIM, nobody is like, oh, I'm worried about this Playbook thing. They're busy, but they don't have any air of like worry or unconfidence. And when the storm came out, there was this undercurrent at RIM when the storm was coming out of, oh my goodness, I don't know if we're going to be able to pull this off. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know how good a quality this is going to be. But every time I talk to someone at RIM about the Playbook, everybody, to a man, gives the impression that everything they've seen and they've used, it's good, it's solid, it works, and they don't have any worries about it.
It's because they didn't build it internally.
Well, they realized that it's not. This is not do or die for. It's not do or die for. Well, they finally did the right thing, right? The operating system.
Yep. They
did. It's not do or die for RIM, but it could be a game changer if done right. So I mean, if they screwed up the playbook, and I don't think that they will. I think it's going to be a great device.
I don't think so. I think from all that we've seen, it's great.
And I think it's going to sell well. And I think it's going to, whether it reaches iPad iconic,
doesn't matter,
world-changing, magical status. I don't know, but it's going to do well. And I think it's going to set them on good footing for QNX as the future. And they had to do it. They had to. I mean, not do or die, but doing it right is a game changer.
So here's a question for you. So I like what they're doing. I want to see this thing out. I like our buddy Doug Soltis is working his butt off to get this thing launched and on the social media side. So he's at Tron on Twitter. So follow him and you'll get some good insight about what's going on. But who are they going to hire to actually launch this? Who's going to be their pitch man? Because the co-CEOs can't do this.
No.
Like who's going to be up on stage on the day that this thing is launched, doing the whole press thing? They got to hire somebody.
That's a good question. Yeah, you don't want to have Mike Lazaridis or Jim Balsillie up on stage.
No, because one will be sweating and the other will be like deer with his deer caught in headlights kind of look. You guys can figure out who they are, but
yeah, I mean smart guys, but they're not there's no Steve Jobs. I mean,
no. So maybe Jeff on the street. Jeff, the guy in Austin at South by Southwest now pitching this thing in the video. I think he's my choice. Jeff, if you're watching this, you should launch this product.
There you go. Unless Rob's angling for a job here. Well, MC.
I don't think after this episode I am going to get a job at RIM. Yeah, and in fact, I think that we just got Doug fired simply because of by association.
Association with.
So hopefully, I think Boy Genius says that that device will be launched in April. Let's hope that it's sooner. I'd like to see this thing out as quickly as possible. I think that it would be cool to see.
Agreed.
So Jeff, you are a Jays fan. So you buy tickets to go see the Toronto Blue Jays all the time, don't you?
I do. I try and go to 3 or 4 games a year if I can.
3 or 4 games? I thought you were a fan.
Well, I'm in Ottawa.
I know. It's a long way to go. Would you believe that 1 in 8 consumers are going to be using mobile ticketing by 2015?
I would believe that.
Do you know what that even means? Like, what does that mean? Like, I'll be buying tickets online, or I will be using a barcode or SMS for gate entry?
Well, I think when they refer to 1 in 8 for mobile ticketing, that they're referring to like when you walk up to the Air Canada gate and you show them your BlackBerry and they scan the front of your BlackBerry for your ticket rather than handing them a paper ticket to check you in. That's the first wave of mobile ticketing. And as that becomes a little more commonplace and pervasive at airports, I think everybody's kind of going, well, if I can do it at an airport, why do I have to get a paper ticket for this or for that? Because everywhere you go, the tickets are now scanned in with barcodes. No one takes your ticket and keeps the stub and puts it in a little box and then goes and counts the stubs for all the 50,000 people showing up to an event anymore. They just scan it in. So I think that definitely there's a good opportunity there for encouraging more people to use their mobile device as their actual ticket. They just have to put more ways in place for people to actually do that. Ticketmaster, I just ordered a ticket for opening day for the Jays on April 1st and one on April 2nd as well for their second game of the season. And I'm on Ticketmaster's site and going through the process, and I'm like, great, click, 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 click. It's like, how do you want to receive your ticket? You can get it by mail, you can go pick it up, or you can have Ticketmaster delivered to you electronically. I'm like, hey, electronically, perfect. Plus $2.50. Oh,
What?
Mail, $0. I'm like, what? So you want me to pay so you can give me an electronic copy of the ticket, but instead of me paying, you will Canada Post mail me a paper ticket?
For free?
It's just kind of ridiculous because the ticket itself has a freaking barcode on it. So, even if they sent it to me electronically, it would actually be to print out. That's what they say. We'll electronically send it to you so you can print it out. We'll charge you $2.50 for that plus your cost of printing, and then take it to the Jays game. So at the Jays game, all they're going to do is scan it in anyways on the barcode on it. So they could probably scan my mobile device in reality right now, but the people at the scanner may not know that they can do that, so I wouldn't want to take the risk of getting kicked out. But the point is, Ticketmaster right there is putting an impediment in for people to doing e-ticketing because they're charging people more to get something electronically which then they're encouraging people to print out. So I really think that, stadiums and venues and, people putting on these events need to encourage people to use electronic ticketing, because it's also much more, is there fraud risk? Well, you can forward your ticket to someone, but once it's scanned, it's scanned and you're not getting in with another ticket. So I'm not sure that the fraud risk is much higher, but I could definitely see all these venues, whether it's sporting events or movie theaters or basically anywhere you go, that uses a ticket that they scan in just to scan the screen of your mobile device.
Well, I think it would cut down on fraud, and I think it would also cut down on scalping and doing all the things that they're trying to cut down on right now. Because if you have it on your mobile device and it's tied to not a PIN, but it's tied to your cell phone number or something, to transfer that would be very difficult. And I think that you'd have to go through proper channels. You can see like a central registry that Ticketmaster or whatever would own, so that if you wanted to transfer ownership of the ticket, you'd have to log in, transfer the ticket, and it would ensure that the ticket is valid, because it would have like a PKI or like a signing authority or something.
Yeah, they would definitely have to put something in, because the stadiums and the sporting events actually do encourage, even if they won't say publicly, people selling their tickets on a secondary market. Yep. StubHub is linked right off of the Blue Jays website to go buy tickets on a secondary market. Oh, yeah. So I don't think that sporting events and teams and all these venues are getting on board with the fact that, people are more likely to spend more on tickets if they know they can sell them afterwards, because they might be able to get out of them, and therefore they'll book more revenue ahead of time and guarantee that in and not worry about what the secondary market is. Yep. But definitely, fine going on Craigslist, which I've done. Actually, the majority of the tickets I've bought for Jays games have been off of Craigslist, just because the tickets are sold in the high-end seats, which is where I typically tend to sit, and getting them off Craigslist is the only place you can get them. But I can actually get the physical ticket, and I guess I'm pretty sure that ticket is the actual ticket. Now, would I know if that was a fake ticket? I'm not sure I would for sure know, but I have somewhat confidence that it's not just a forwarded email that they forwarded on to 17 different people. So when they switch over to doing more e-ticketing, they would have to be a registry where basically if you wanted to buy a ticket, you'd have to have the ticket transferred to you through the third-party registry to make sure that you knew you were getting a valid ticket, and you weren't going to show up at the gate and they're going, hey, 17 other people tried to scan this ticket in. Sorry.
Well, I think that
I'm wondering, because the 250 there's got to be a reason for that. Like, there has to be. It's such a boneheaded move, but there's got to be something that there's some part of the business model that I don't understand, that there's a reason that they're charging the extra money for the e-ticket. And you're right. Like, it's not that hard to if you put your mind to it, to really make a photocopy of a ticket, or 100 photocopies of a ticket, and just try and sell them. But people don't do that because they'll be at best out of business after that. But what would the 250 be for? I can't think of why would you charge extra for the,
just because it's cool.
Well, there's two things, right? One, you can get your ticket immediately. Like, as soon as you click purchase, boom, you get an email with your ticket on it, rather than having it sent in the mail, which it actually says I'll get my ticket within 5 days ahead, at least 5 days ahead of the event, but it doesn't say what day I'll have my ticket arrive on. So there's a little bit of variable there in terms of planning to make sure I'm getting the ticket or whatever that comes in the mail versus having it immediately. And so also, it's just another case of a company going, we have we consider a value-added service, so adding a value-added price to it rather than leveraging that value add as a differentiator. Also, because who's Ticketmaster's competition? Like, who else do you buy a ticket from, right? So
it's just part of the service, the Ticketmaster service fee.
Exactly. It's one of those cases of there isn't 6 different sources to go and buy tickets from, really, in terms of a first-run ticket brokering company. So they kind of have carte blanche to say, well, we want to charge you whatever we're going to charge you, and you don't have anywhere else to get it from. So as long as they charge an amount that keeps the number of complaints to the sources of tickets low enough that they don't boot Ticketmaster out of their systems for selling tickets, then they'll try and milk people for as much as they can get. Like, you can say it's a monopoly of abuse of power, or you could say it's capitalism. Depends on whose side you're on.
It's just cold-hearted economic calculations. Oh, I see. So it's the early adopters. The 1 in 8 will still pay the extra fee. Or maybe now it's not 1 in 8, it's like 1 in 20 will still pay the extra fee.
Well, I think that, the whole printed home adoption was very high. I think that this will be much higher than 1 in 8 by 2015. I think it will be a substantial number. I don't travel with tickets anymore on airlines because I just bring my passport. I don't even use any barcode scanners. But the one thing that is surprising is that this is a low number. I think that certainly all of the issues that a lot of these ticket retail places are having could be resolved on a mobile device.
And by the way, I don't have a printer. So
there's that.
I do know other people in that situation too that are going, what do I need a printer for right now? Because I don't print anything out. I just store it on my mobile device when I need to take it somewhere. So
it's like
sending people something to print.
Can you please print, sign, and scan this? And I'm like, yeah, really? No.
Can't do it. So, well, that's it. I mean, no more news. We managed to plow through like 40 minutes talking about absolutely nothing again. But it was a lively discussion. I think the moral of today is that you can do a lot with $42 million. And somebody should build a ticket registry for sign-in, sign-out authority on tickets and bring in the expiring goods side of things as well for $42 million.
And brand it with Angry Birds.
And put a big freaking Angry... If I ever... another one. If I ever walk into Angry Birds Stadium, I will never go in...
That would be amazing. Come on, Springsteen's Comeback Tour is sponsored by Angry Birds.
The Arizona Cardinals will have their stadium sponsored by Angry Birds.
That would be it. Or if we ever had like a new hockey franchise, like the Winnipeg Angry Birds, I would abandon hockey as a Canadian. I would rip it out of my blood.
Yeah, I can't imagine that ever happening to hockey.
So Bacon, you're in a couple of weeks. You're speaking somewhere. Let's plug this.
On March 30th, I'll be in Toronto. There's a free half-day conference put on by Bitheads in Toronto called Mobile App Madness. You can find out more information at mobileappmadness.com. It's going to be me, one of our sales guys, Eric Doucette, a person from Ipsos Reid, and a couple other representatives from the mobile industry. We're going to do a half day just talking about the mobile industry, about mobile apps, about how you can bring your brand over onto mobile effectively. It's a free conference. It lasts, the morning from 10 o'clock till noon, or 9 o'clock till noon in the morning. So I think it should be an interesting half day if you're in Toronto to stop by. We're aiming for about 150 people to come to it, and aiming to make sure that we have some networking time and face-to-face time afterwards if you want to ask some further questions. So, not just if you want to talk to me in person, which I'm sure is a valuable resource for everybody who's listening to this, but there'll be other professionals there as well, speaking and attending. We'll have lots of insights into the mobile industry. It's a free conference, so if you're in Toronto, I think it could be worthwhile to spend the morning there.
Oddly enough, as a mobile expert myself, I didn't quite get the invitation to participate as a speaker on this thing. It was just a weird thing. I must have got lost or something. I don't know. Anthony,
yeah.
Are you going?
Am I?
Wait a second. Is he speaking? Yeah. So
I'm running a company. I got too much stuff to do. Can't go to every little.
Well, I guess I that's my excuse too. Yes, I couldn't do it.
No,
I'm too busy.
It seems like it's going to actually be a great event. I was looking at the site today and the speakers and things that are lined up. So, it seems like it actually seems like it's going to be a really interesting event. It's a great idea, especially in Toronto.
I think
so much more development that happens in Toronto.
I think we'll do the Untether session on March 30th, and I'm going to invite Anthony to that one.
There we go.
So it's March 30th in Toronto.
Why are we speaking at the time?
Exactly. We've had it before. It's just the two of us. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. We'll see you next week. Hopefully, what happens in South by Southwest is reflective next week in the announcements that come. I know a lot of software is being tested. A lot of new applications are being tested in platforms, and it should be a good one. I think that next Sunday we'll have a really great roundup of who won and who lost, and where things are going from this petri dish they call South by Southwest. Speaking of petri dishes, this disease is done. Episode number 8. Let's put this thing to bed so we can go. Wow. Yes. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
So, Anthony, we can find you at zeeboo.com.
That works.
Easy enough. And Bacon's still clinging to the about.me/Jeff Bacon.
Yeah, because if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably found it in other places you can get to me at, either linked from Untether or from my blog at bacononthego.com. So
Bacon on the go. That's
Yeah.
Canadian bacon on the go. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a good one. Thank you guys for watching and listening wherever you are. We really appreciate you guys hanging on and participating in this discussion. See you guys next week.